In today's fast-paced world, we are constantly bombarded with worries about the past and future. We obsess over past mistakes, regret missed opportunities, or anxiously anticipate what lies ahead. These constant thoughts often spiral into stress and anxiety. But here's a question: can we free ourselves from these negative feelings and truly experience inner peace? The book, The Power of Now, by Eckhart Tolle offers the answer. Written from the perspective of someone who has gone through a journey of self-awareness and enlightenment, this book carries a powerful message: the power of living in the present moment. According to Eckhart Tolle, the main issue with most people is that they do not live in the present moment. Instead, they are often consumed by thoughts about the past or future. It is these uncontrolled thoughts, especially the negative ones, that cause us to lose our peace of mind and create suffering. The Power of Now encourages readers to realize that only by fully embracing the present moment can we achieve true peace. This book is not just a spiritual guide, but a practical method to change the way we think and perceive life. Tolle helps us understand that the suffering we experience in life does not come from external events, but from the way we react to those events. Our suffering stems from the ego, the part of us that creates feelings of lack, anger, worry, and fear. The Power of Now is not necessarily an easy read for everyone because it requires the reader to pause and reflect on their own life and how they approach it. However, it is precisely this challenge that makes the book a powerful tool for helping people break free from mental turmoil and find peace. Eckhart Tolle not only encourages us to be aware of our presence in the moment but also provides practical methods to achieve this. He teaches us how to separate ourselves from negative thoughts, let go of unnecessary emotions, and instead, live in a state of awareness, a state where we are fully present, not distracted by the past or the future. One of the book's strengths is how Tolle conveys his message in a simple and understandable way, yet profound enough to make the reader pause and rethink their life. He helps us realize that peace is not something we can find outside of ourselves, but an inner state that each of us has the ability to access. With The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle not only teaches us about living in the present but also offers deep lessons on how we can shift our perception and, as a result, transform our lives. If you feel caught up in the whirlwind of anxiety and stress, this book is the key to unlocking a new way of living, a life of peace and true happiness. Let's learn about each part of this book in detail. Chapter 1: You Are Not Your Mind. In the first chapter of The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle begins by pointing out one of the core issues that most of us face in life: the mistaken perception of self. Tolle asserts that we are not our thoughts. Most of us define ourselves by our thoughts, emotions, and actions, but in reality, we are far more than these things. The concept of the ego and the mind. Tolle explains that the ego is an artificial concept, a part of each person that creates the sense of existence through thoughts and emotions. The ego is not our true nature. It is merely a part of the mind, and the mind, according to Tolle, often controls how we perceive and experience the world. We not only identify with our thoughts but allow them to define everything about us: our sense of self, our relationships, our successes and failures, and our emotions. Because of this, when the mind becomes the ego, we begin to live in an imagined world where everything is classified, judged, and measured through a biased lens. The suffering caused by the mind. Tolle goes on to explain that most of the suffering in life comes from our identification with the mind. When we let the mind drive all our actions, we get caught up in cycles of anxiety, fear, regret about the past, and worry about the future. These things create inner turmoil, distancing us from the peace we could otherwise experience. Tolle encourages us to realize that our true essence is not our thoughts. Behind our thoughts is a real self, the witness, who observes everything but is not controlled by the mind. To achieve peace, we must learn to distinguish between the mind and our true selves, not letting the mind control our lives. Detaching yourself from the mind. One of the key points that Tolle addresses in this chapter is detaching the self from the mind. He asserts that when we realize that we are not the mind, we can begin to live in presence, a state where the mind no longer manipulates our emotions and thoughts. Living in the present moment is the path to this state. When we live in the present, there is no thought about the past or the future, and we can experience absolute peace. Tolle uses an example to illustrate this: when you feel physical pain, if you fully focus on the sensation of pain without letting the mind create thoughts about that pain, you will notice that the pain is not a part of you but just a temporary experience. This helps you not react from the ego and, as a result, reduces suffering. Finding peace within. Tolle also emphasizes that peace is not something that can be found outside of ourselves. We cannot achieve peace through material things, accomplishments, or relationships because these things change and can cause anxiety when we depend on them. True peace can only be found when we live in the present and recognize that we are not our thoughts, emotions, or any external phenomenon. Detaching from the mental agitation. In this chapter, Tolle further explains that when we live in the past or the future, our mind is governed by what has happened or what is yet to come. Thoughts about the past may cause us to regret, feel sorrow, or lament. Thoughts about the future may lead to worry, fear, or expectation. Tolle advises us to live only in the present moment, because it is only then that we can experience peace, free from the distractions of what has already passed or what is yet to come. The path to awareness. Tolle concludes the first chapter by introducing the path to awareness. Awareness is not something distant or unattainable. It is about fully living in the present moment, realizing that we are not the mind. When we do this, we will discover that our true nature is a pure, eternal, and complete consciousness. Chapter 2, Consciousness, the Way Out of Pain. In the second chapter of The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle delves into the concept of consciousness and how it provides a way out of the pain that arises from the mind. Tolle elaborates on the idea that suffering is a result of the ego's control over the mind, and the path to inner peace and freedom lies in consciousness, or being fully aware of the present moment. The nature of pain and suffering. Tolle begins by discussing the nature of pain and suffering. He explains that pain, both physical and emotional, is often intensified by the mind. Our mental reaction to pain, such as judging it, labeling it, or thinking about it, magnifies the experience. This mental reaction is a function of the ego, which thrives on creating separation, conflict, and judgment. The pain body, a term Tolle uses in this chapter, refers to the accumulation of emotional pain that we carry with us throughout our lives. This emotional pain often stems from past experiences, unresolved traumas, and negative emotions. The pain body feeds on negative thoughts and reactions, and it becomes more active when we identify with it. The mind and the pain body. Tolle emphasizes that the mind is not who we are, and by becoming more aware of our thoughts and feelings, we can begin to detach from them. The pain body is closely related to the ego because it strengthens the ego's sense of identity. The ego often feeds on the pain, as it provides a sense of self that is based on suffering, loss, or struggle. This identification with pain is one of the main reasons why people find it difficult to escape their suffering. The pain body can take over our thoughts and emotions, causing us to act out in anger, sadness, or fear, further fueling the cycle of pain. Becoming conscious of the present moment. The way out of this cycle of pain, Tolle argues, is through consciousness, which is the ability to be fully aware and present in the moment without judgment or attachment. When we become conscious, we stop identifying with the mind and emotions and begin to observe them as separate from our true self. Tolle points out that consciousness allows us to disidentify from our emotions and thoughts, particularly those that cause suffering. Instead of reacting to pain or negative emotions, we can acknowledge them and let them pass without allowing them to define our state of being. This is where true freedom begins, when we no longer feel the need to react or be overwhelmed by our thoughts and feelings. Observing the mind and the pain body. In this chapter, Tolle introduces the practice of observing the mind and the pain body as a method of gaining control over them. He encourages the reader to become an observer of their thoughts and emotions rather than identifying with them. This practice helps to break the habitual patterns of the mind that keep us trapped in cycles of negativity and suffering. Tolle offers a powerful insight. When we observe our pain without judgment, we begin to dissolve the ego's grip on our consciousness. Pain is no longer something that defines us. It is simply a temporary experience that passes through us. By practicing mindfulness and presence, we free ourselves from the control of the ego and the pain body. The power of presence. Tolle asserts that the power of now, or living in the present moment, is the key to overcoming suffering. When we live fully in the present, without the constant interference of past memories or future projections, we enter a state of peace and awareness. This state of being is often referred to as presence. Presence allows us to experience life as it is, without the distortion of mental judgments or emotional reactions. Living in the present moment brings us into direct contact with the unmanifested, the deeper dimension of life that lies beyond thoughts and emotions. It is in this dimension that we experience true peace, joy, and fulfillment. The more we practice presence, the more we align ourselves with our true nature and the more we dissolve the pain that the ego and the mind create. The importance of inner space. Tolle emphasizes that inner space is crucial for achieving lasting peace. Inner space is the spaciousness within us that allows us to be fully aware of the present moment. It is the stillness that underlies all thoughts and emotions. When we are able to create and sustain this inner space, we can experience life from a place of calm and awareness, unaffected by the turbulent waves of the mind. This inner space is not something that we can force or manipulate. It is something that arises naturally when we stop resisting the present moment and allow ourselves to simply be. The more we cultivate this inner space through conscious awareness, the more we experience the freedom from suffering. Transcending the ego and the pain body. Tolle explains that transcending the ego and the pain body is not a one-time event but an ongoing process. The more we practice consciousness, the more we break free from the mental patterns that keep us trapped in suffering. This process of spiritual awakening allows us to experience life from a higher state of consciousness, one that is not dominated by the ego or the pain body. Transcendence is about being fully present in the now, without attachment to the past or future. It is about recognizing that we are not our thoughts, emotions, or pain. We are pure consciousness, capable of observing the mind without identifying with it. Conclusion: the way out of pain. In conclusion, Tolle asserts that consciousness is the way out of pain. The more we learn to live in the present moment, observe our thoughts and emotions without attachment, and create inner space, the more we free ourselves from the grip of the ego and the pain body. By practicing presence, we can dissolve the patterns of suffering that have dominated our lives, and experience the peace and joy that come with true awareness. Chapter 3, Moving Deeply into the Now. In Chapter 3 of The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle takes the reader deeper into the concept of living in the present moment, showing how we can begin to immerse ourselves fully in the now and experience its transformative power. This chapter focuses on understanding the nature of time, the role of awareness in everyday life, and how we can cultivate a deeper connection to the present moment. The illusion of time. Tolle begins by explaining that time, as we commonly understand it, is an illusion created by the mind. The mind constructs time as a linear sequence, past, present, and future, which we use to organize and make sense of our experiences. However, this mental construct of time is not reality. The present moment is all we ever truly have. The past is gone, and the future has not yet arrived. When we focus on the past or the future, we are not truly living, we are only living in the mind, disconnected from the present. Tolle emphasizes that the now is the only time that exists, and it is the only time in which we can experience life, make decisions, and change our circumstances. By continually projecting our thoughts into the future or dwelling on the past, we miss the reality of the present. This constant preoccupation with time, Tolle asserts, is one of the major obstacles to spiritual awakening and inner peace. The now is the door to the eternal. Tolle then introduces the idea that the present moment is the doorway to the eternal. When we fully experience the now, we open ourselves up to a deeper dimension of existence, one that is beyond the limitations of time and the physical world. This deeper state of consciousness is not bound by past experiences or future expectations. It is a state of pure awareness, where we are fully alive, fully present, and fully in tune with the flow of life. Living in the now allows us to connect with the unmanifested, a term Tolle uses to describe the dimension of consciousness beyond form. This is where true peace, joy, and spiritual awakening can be found. The now, when fully embraced, brings us into direct contact with the essence of life itself. The power of now in everyday life. Tolle moves on to show how we can incorporate the practice of living in the now into our everyday lives. He emphasizes that we don't have to withdraw from the world or go into seclusion to experience presence. Presence can be cultivated in every moment, regardless of what we are doing. Whether we are eating, walking, working, or engaging in conversation, we can practice being fully aware of the present moment. Tolle gives a practical example. When we are walking, we can focus on the sensations in our feet, the sound of our footsteps, the movement of our body, and the sights and sounds around us. This simple practice of being present with what is helps us break free from the mind's tendency to wander into the past or future. By continually returning to the present moment, we create a sense of space and stillness within ourselves. This space is where true peace exists, free from the incessant chatter of the mind and the mental projections that usually dominate our lives. The resistance to the now. Despite the clarity of the present moment, many people resist it. The mind resists the now because it thrives on the past and future. The mind constantly seeks to relive past experiences or to plan and worry about the future. This resistance comes from the ego, which is afraid of losing control and being in the present without distractions. Tolle explains that this resistance is the source of much of our suffering. The ego doesn't want to let go of its attachment to time and the sense of identity that comes with the past and future. It is only when we learn to let go of this resistance and embrace the now that we can experience peace. Resistance to the present moment manifests in various ways, such as feeling bored, anxious, frustrated, or restless. These feelings arise because the ego doesn't want to be fully in the now. However, when we consciously drop our resistance and accept the present moment as it is, we free ourselves from these negative emotions and enter a state of inner calm. How to enter the now? Tolle provides some guidance on how to enter the now and make it a permanent part of our experience. The first step is awareness, being fully aware of the present moment. This involves noticing your thoughts and feelings without becoming identified with them. Observing the mind as a detached witness helps you realize that you are not your thoughts, but the one who is aware of them. Next, Tolle emphasizes the importance of stilling the mind in order to experience pure presence. This doesn't mean we need to stop thinking altogether, but rather that we learn to quiet the mental noise so we can be more attuned to the present moment. Meditation is one way to cultivate this stillness, but Tolle also suggests practicing presence throughout the day in simple activities, such as listening to the sound of a bird chirping or feeling the warmth of the sun on your skin. Another technique for entering the now is to focus on your breathing. The breath is always present in the now, and by paying attention to it, we can anchor ourselves in the present moment. When we breathe deeply and consciously, we bring our attention back to the body, grounding ourselves in the reality of the present. Surrendering to the now. Tolle introduces the concept of surrendering to the now as a final step in embracing the present moment. This doesn't mean giving up or resigning to life's challenges, but rather it means accepting what is without judgment or resistance. Surrendering is about letting go of the mental struggle to control the future or regret the past. It's about trusting that the present moment is exactly as it should be, even if it doesn't meet our expectations or desires. Surrendering to the now allows us to experience the flow of life in its purest form. When we stop fighting against what is, we align ourselves with the present moment and become part of the natural rhythm of life. Conclusion: moving deeper into the now. In conclusion, Tolle reiterates that the path to true peace and spiritual awakening lies in the present moment. The now is not just a fleeting moment, it is the gateway to deeper consciousness. By practicing presence, observing the mind, and surrendering to what is, we can move deeper into the now and experience life from a place of inner peace and harmony. Living in the now requires ongoing awareness and practice, but as we continue to embrace the present, we open ourselves to a greater sense of being and a more profound connection with life itself. Chapter 4, Mind Strategies for Avoiding the Now. In Chapter 4 of The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle explores the various strategies the mind uses to avoid living fully in the present moment. He explains that the mind is constantly in motion, always seeking distractions, and creating stories that prevent us from experiencing life as it truly is. The ego, which thrives on these mental patterns, plays a significant role in keeping us from being fully aware of the present. The mind's habit of escaping the present. Tolle begins by explaining that the mind is designed to resist the present moment, and it does so by creating an endless stream of thoughts that either dwell on the past or worry about the future. The mind rarely stays focused on the now because it thrives on narratives, thoughts, and judgments about what has already happened or what might happen. These mental activities serve as a form of escape from the present moment, as they give the mind a sense of control and meaning. He notes that we often identify with our thoughts and emotions so deeply that we live in a constant state of mental activity, which makes it difficult to be fully present. The ego feeds on this constant mental activity because it provides a sense of identity and purpose. This explains why many people find it difficult to sit in silence or simply be with themselves without becoming distracted or overwhelmed by their thoughts. The ego's strategy: creating a story. Tolle identifies one of the primary ways the mind avoids the now as creating stories. These stories are often centered around our personal history, desires, and fears. The mind tells itself a story about who we are, where we've been, and what we want to achieve, making it almost impossible to be fully present in the current moment. For example, we may identify with the story of our past, replaying old memories and reliving past experiences. This is a way for the mind to avoid dealing with the discomfort of being present because the present moment is always neutral and free of judgments. By constantly reliving past events, we stay connected to a familiar narrative that the ego clings to. It allows the mind to maintain a sense of self that is attached to the past. Similarly, the mind also creates stories about the future, constantly anticipating what might happen, and often imagining worst-case scenarios. These future projections are fueled by the ego's desire for certainty and control. Tolle explains that when we are caught up in thoughts about the future, we are unable to fully embrace the richness and reality of the present moment. The role of the pain body. Another strategy the mind uses to avoid the now is the pain body, a concept Tolle introduced in Chapter 2. The pain body refers to the accumulated emotional pain from past experiences, which is often buried in the unconscious mind. The ego uses the pain body to perpetuate feelings of suffering, reinforcing the idea that life is difficult or painful. When we are identified with the pain body, we are not living in the present but are instead reliving past emotional wounds. Tolle explains that the mind frequently uses the pain body as a means of distraction from the now. The pain body seeks to create negative emotions that become the focal point of our thoughts. This emotional energy feeds into the ego's need for conflict and drama. The more we identify with the pain body, the more we become trapped in a cycle of emotional and mental suffering. The why behind mind strategies. Tolle also examines the deeper reasons behind the mind's resistance to the present moment. At the core, the mind wants to avoid the present because it cannot control it. The present is fluid, constantly changing, and free of attachment. The mind, on the other hand, thrives on control, structure, and familiarity. It wants to hold on to past experiences and future projections to maintain a sense of security. The ego feeds off the mind's strategies, using them to create a stable sense of identity. This sense of identity, however, is always rooted in the past or future, never in the present. As long as we are identified with the mind and ego, we are unable to experience the deep peace and stillness that comes from being fully present. Breaking free from mental strategies. In this chapter, Tolle emphasizes that awareness is the key to breaking free from the mind's strategies. The first step is to become aware of how the mind creates distractions, stories, and judgments that pull us away from the present moment. Once we become aware of these mental patterns, we can begin to detach from them and stop identifying with them. Tolle encourages the reader to start by observing their thoughts without getting caught up in them. By simply observing the thoughts as they arise, we can create a space between ourselves and the mind. This space allows us to choose not to react to the thoughts, emotions, and stories the mind creates. As we practice this, we gradually become more conscious and present. Acceptance of what is. Tolle also emphasizes the importance of accepting the present moment as it is. The mind often resists what is because it doesn't match its expectations or desires. However, when we learn to accept what is happening right now, without judgment or resistance, we align ourselves with the flow of life. This acceptance creates an inner peace that is independent of external circumstances. Rather than trying to change the present or escape from it, Tolle teaches us to surrender to it. This doesn't mean resigning ourselves to suffering or injustice, but rather acknowledging that we can only change our reality by fully accepting it as it is in the present moment. Surrendering to the now is the key to transcending the mental strategies of avoidance that keep us trapped in the past and future. Living fully in the now. Tolle concludes the chapter by reiterating that living in the now requires conscious effort. It's not enough to simply read about being present, we must practice it every day. Whether it's through mindfulness, observing the mind, or surrendering to the present, the goal is to gradually detach from the mind's strategies and live fully in the present moment. He encourages us to become deeply aware of the present and to embrace the simplicity and peace it offers. By doing so, we free ourselves from the mental patterns and emotional dramas that have kept us from experiencing life as it truly is. Chapter 5, The State of Presence. In Chapter 5 of The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle discusses the importance of the state of presence, a state in which we are fully conscious and aware of the present moment. This chapter elaborates on how we can achieve true presence by breaking free from the constant interference of our thoughts and emotions, and how the state of presence leads to true peace and spiritual awakening. What is presence? Tolle begins by defining presence as the state of being fully immersed in the now, a state where the mind is no longer running the show. Presence is when we are not dwelling in the past or projecting into the future, but instead experiencing life exactly as it is in the present moment. It is a state of awareness that transcends thought and ego, bringing us into direct contact with the essence of life. Presence, according to Tolle, is not just a fleeting moment of attention, it is an ongoing state of consciousness that we can cultivate and experience consistently. It is a deep awareness that connects us to the unmanifested, the source of all life, which is beyond form and thought. The mind and the present moment. Tolle explains that the mind is one of the biggest obstacles to presence. The mind constantly distracts us from the now by drawing us into thoughts about the past or future. As long as we are identified with the mind, we are not truly present. We are instead lost in a world of mental projections and stories that keep us disconnected from the real world around us. The mind, Tolle says, is always trying to impose itself on the present. It tries to make us think that we need to analyze, judge, or label everything around us, when in reality, true peace and fulfillment are found by simply being present. When we let go of the need to control and understand everything, we open ourselves up to experiencing life as it is. The role of the body in presence. One of the key elements of presence is being aware of the body. Tolle emphasizes that the body plays a crucial role in helping us stay grounded in the present moment. By paying attention to the sensations in our body, we can anchor ourselves in the now and transcend the distractions of the mind. Tolle suggests focusing on the inner body, which refers to the subtle aliveness or energy field that exists within us. This inner body is felt through a heightened awareness of the physical sensations in our body, such as the feeling of breath, the pulse, or the movement of energy. By bringing our awareness to the inner body, we create a sense of inner stillness and connection to the present. Living from the source of being. Tolle explains that true presence arises when we are able to live from the source of being, the stillness and peace that lie beyond our thoughts and emotions. This source of being is often referred to as the unmanifested, the realm of pure consciousness and existence that is not bound by time, form, or thought. Living from this source means that we are not influenced by the fluctuations of the mind or emotions. We experience life as a continuous flow of the present, unburdened by mental projections or past traumas. This state of being brings us into direct contact with the deeper dimension of life, where true peace and joy reside. Breaking the identification with the mind. A significant part of achieving presence is breaking our identification with the mind. The mind constantly wants to label, judge, and categorize everything we experience. However, true presence occurs when we stop identifying with the thoughts, emotions, and judgments that the mind generates. Instead, we become an observer of these thoughts without getting caught up in them. Tolle explains that when we are able to observe our thoughts from a place of detachment, we can separate ourselves from the mind's control. We realize that we are not our thoughts, we are the consciousness that is aware of them. This shift in perception is the key to experiencing the state of presence. By recognizing that we are not our thoughts, we can begin to live from a place of pure awareness, free from the influence of the ego and the mind. The pain body and presence. In this chapter, Tolle revisits the concept of the pain body, which he discussed in previous chapters. The pain body is the accumulation of past emotional pain and trauma that lives within us, often unconsciously. It is a part of the ego that feeds on negative emotions and seeks to perpetuate suffering. Tolle explains that when we are in a state of presence, the pain body loses its power over us. The pain body thrives on emotional reactivity, so when we stop reacting to our emotions and start observing them without identification, the pain body begins to dissolve. The more we practice presence, the less the pain body can influence our thoughts and emotions, and we experience more inner peace. The now and the eternal. Tolle emphasizes that the present moment is not just a fleeting instant of time, it is connected to the eternal. The eternal is the timeless dimension of consciousness that exists beyond the physical world and beyond the limitations of time. When we are fully present, we tap into this eternal dimension, experiencing life from a place of infinite peace and stillness. Living in the now, according to Tolle, is the gateway to experiencing the eternal. The now is not just a moment that passes, but the point of access to a deeper dimension of consciousness that is beyond time and form. By staying fully present, we align ourselves with this eternal consciousness and become one with the flow of life. The state of presence in relationships. Tolle also discusses how the state of presence can transform our relationships. When we are fully present in our interactions with others, we are no longer projecting our past experiences or expectations onto them. We are simply open and receptive to who they are in the moment. Presence allows us to experience true connection with others, free from the distortions of the ego. In relationships, the ego often creates conflict and separation by projecting its own desires, judgments, and expectations onto others. However, when we are present, we see others for who they truly are, not for the story we have created about them. This leads to deeper, more authentic relationships. Conclusion: living in the now. In conclusion, Tolle emphasizes that the state of presence is not a fleeting experience, but a continuous way of being. By practicing mindfulness, observing the mind, and detaching from the ego, we can access the deep peace and stillness that reside in the present moment. The more we live in the now, the more we connect with the eternal dimension of consciousness, where true peace, joy, and fulfillment reside. True presence is a transformative state that allows us to experience life from a place of inner stillness, free from the distractions of the mind and the ego. As we move deeper into the now, we move closer to our true essence and the timeless truth of who we are. Chapter 6, The Inner Body. In Chapter 6 of The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle explores the concept of the inner body as a way to anchor ourselves in the present moment and cultivate a deeper connection to our true essence. He explains how becoming aware of the inner body allows us to move beyond the mind, ego, and emotional pain, leading us to experience a sense of peace and presence. The inner body, a gateway to presence. Tolle begins by discussing the inner body as an essential tool for practicing presence. The inner body refers to the energy field within us, which is not the same as our physical body. While the physical body is composed of matter and can be seen with the eyes, the inner body is the subtle energy field that animates and sustains us. It can be felt, but not directly seen. The inner body is always present, and it is our connection to the present moment. When we focus our awareness on the inner body, we ground ourselves in the now. This practice of connecting with the inner body helps us move beyond the mental distractions that keep us from being fully present. Tolle explains that the inner body is a vital part of our consciousness and serves as an anchor that pulls us out of the endless stream of thoughts that often dominate our experience. By bringing attention to the inner body, we shift our awareness from the mind and ego to the present moment and to our true essence. Sensing the inner body. To connect with the inner body, Tolle suggests a simple practice: direct your awareness to the sensations within your body. This could include feeling the aliveness in your hands, feet, legs, chest, and head. By becoming aware of the subtle energy inside your body, you stop identifying with your thoughts and emotions, which are often rooted in the past or future. The practice of sensing the inner body brings us into a state of pure awareness. When we focus on the sensations within the body, we connect to the present moment in a direct and experiential way. We are no longer lost in thought or emotion. Instead, we become present with the aliveness that flows through us. Tolle explains that the inner body is not a static thing. It is a dynamic, living field of energy that flows and changes constantly. As we bring awareness to this energy field, we become more attuned to the vibrant aliveness of our existence. The inner body and the ego. Tolle also explores how the inner body relates to the ego. The ego thrives on the mind's ability to label, judge, and categorize everything we experience. It is focused on separation, identifying with the past, and worrying about the future. The ego keeps us trapped in a cycle of thoughts and emotions, and as long as we identify with the ego, we cannot experience true presence. The inner body offers a way to transcend the ego because it is rooted in the present moment. Unlike the ego, which is constantly striving and projecting, the inner body is a state of pure being. When we sense the inner body, we connect with a deeper level of consciousness that is not bound by the ego's need for control or identification. By focusing on the inner body, we create space between ourselves and the mental and emotional patterns that the ego constantly generates. This space allows us to experience a profound sense of peace and stillness. The importance of awareness. Tolle emphasizes that awareness is key to experiencing the inner body. Simply being aware of the inner body doesn't necessarily mean that we will always feel it, but by paying attention to it consistently, we begin to shift our consciousness away from the constant noise of the mind. This shift is essential for spiritual awakening and living in the now. Tolle suggests that we practice becoming more aware of our inner body throughout the day, especially during routine activities like walking, eating, or sitting. The more we become aware of the inner body, the more we experience life from a place of stillness and presence. The inner body and emotional pain. Tolle also explores how the inner body can help us deal with emotional pain. When we experience negative emotions, they often arise as a result of identification with the ego. These emotions can become trapped in the body, creating tension, discomfort, and a sense of heaviness. The practice of connecting with the inner body helps us release emotional pain because it allows us to move beyond the mental stories and judgments that fuel the pain. Instead of reacting to emotional pain with more thoughts and judgments, we can simply feel the sensations in our body without becoming attached to them. This process of feeling the pain in the body without labeling it or resisting it allows the emotional energy to flow through us, dissolving the pain over time. By observing the sensations in the inner body without becoming identified with them, we allow the pain body to dissipate. The inner body and the breath. Breathing is another important aspect of connecting with the inner body. Tolle explains that the breath is the bridge between the mind and the body. By bringing our attention to the breath, we can naturally draw our awareness into the present moment and connect with the inner body. Tolle suggests that we focus on the feeling of the breath as it moves in and out of the body. This simple practice helps us become present and allows the energy of the inner body to become more vivid and alive. The breath anchors us in the now and creates a sense of calm and stillness within the body. Living from the inner body. Living from the inner body means living from a place of awareness and presence. It involves cultivating a deeper connection to the life energy that flows within us, rather than identifying with the constant chatter of the mind. By living from the inner body, we can experience a state of beingness that transcends the ego and the limitations of the mind. Tolle explains that living from the inner body doesn't mean we stop using the mind or engaging with the world. Rather, it means that we are no longer controlled by the mind. We become witnesses of our thoughts and emotions, rather than being identified with them. This state of presence allows us to live more freely and authentically, without being caught up in the patterns of the ego. Conclusion: the inner body as a path to presence. In conclusion, Tolle emphasizes that the inner body is a powerful tool for spiritual awakening and living in the now. By becoming aware of the inner body, we can transcend the ego, connect with our true essence, and experience life from a place of peace and stillness. The inner body is a gateway to presence, and by practicing awareness of it, we can access a deeper level of consciousness and experience the true joy and freedom of being. Chapter 7, Portals into the Unmanifested. In Chapter 7 of The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle delves into the concept of the unmanifested, the deeper, spiritual dimension of existence that lies beyond form and thought. He explains how this dimension is always available to us and how we can access it through various portals, ways of experiencing life that take us beyond the confines of the ego and the material world. The unmanifested, beyond thought and form. Tolle begins by describing the unmanifested as the essence of life that is beyond form, thought, and time. The unmanifested is not something that can be perceived by the mind, as it is beyond the realm of mental constructs. Instead, it is a state of pure being or consciousness that exists beyond the physical world. It is the source of all life and the invisible dimension that sustains the manifest world. The unmanifested is always present, but it is hidden from us by the constant activity of the mind and the ego. The ego creates a sense of separation from this deeper dimension of life because it identifies with form and individual identity. The unmanifested, on the other hand, is formless, timeless, and universal. It is the source of all creation and the true essence of who we are. The role of the present moment. Tolle explains that the present moment is one of the most important portals to the unmanifested. When we are fully present and aware, we step beyond the limitations of the mind and connect with the unmanifested dimension of consciousness. In the present moment, there is no past or future, no thoughts or emotions to distract us. We are simply being, experiencing life as it is, without mental interference. The unmanifested is directly accessible in the now, but most of us are so caught up in mental patterns and distractions that we fail to notice it. Presence is the key to accessing this deeper state of consciousness. When we are present, we move beyond the ego and the mind, entering a state of pure awareness that is connected to the unmanifested. Silence and stillness as portals. Tolle emphasizes that silence and stillness are powerful portals into the unmanifested. These qualities are not simply the absence of sound or movement, but the inner peace that arises when the mind is quiet. Silence and stillness are not passive states but are active dimensions of awareness that allow us to experience life without the constant interference of mental chatter. In silence, we can access the deeper layers of consciousness. This silence is not something that can be sought or controlled, it arises naturally when we let go of our attachment to thought. Meditation is one practice that helps us cultivate this inner silence, but Tolle suggests that we can also experience silence in everyday life by simply becoming aware of the present moment and letting go of mental noise. Stillness, too, is a portal to the unmanifested. Stillness does not mean inaction or lack of movement. Instead, it refers to a state of inner peace and harmony, where we are no longer driven by the restless activity of the mind. In stillness, we can connect with the deeper dimensions of consciousness and experience the unmanifested. Consciousness beyond the mind. Tolle stresses that true consciousness is beyond the mind. While the mind is a tool that allows us to navigate the world, it is also the source of many of our problems and suffering. The mind is constantly thinking, analyzing, and judging, which prevents us from experiencing the present moment in its fullness. Consciousness, on the other hand, is the pure awareness that underlies all of our thoughts and perceptions. It is the witness that observes the mind without identifying with it. When we access the unmanifested, we move beyond the mental realm and experience a state of pure consciousness, a state where we are fully aware, yet free from the distractions of thought and ego. To access this deeper consciousness, Tolle encourages us to witness the mind rather than becoming absorbed in it. When we observe our thoughts without judgment or identification, we create space between ourselves and the mind. This space is where the unmanifested can be experienced. Surrender to the unmanifested. Tolle introduces the concept of surrendering to the unmanifested as an essential practice for spiritual awakening. Surrendering does not mean giving up or resigning ourselves to life's challenges, but rather it means accepting life as it is without resistance. Surrendering to the unmanifested means allowing ourselves to be fully present and open to the flow of life, without clinging to mental concepts or expectations. When we surrender to the now, we align ourselves with the unmanifested dimension of consciousness. We stop resisting life and let it unfold naturally. This state of surrender is not passive, it is an active practice of being present and aware in each moment, without the interference of the ego or mind. The inner stillness and the unmanifested. Tolle emphasizes that inner stillness is essential for experiencing the unmanifested. This stillness is not something that can be cultivated through effort or willpower, but rather it arises naturally when we stop resisting the present moment. The mind is the main barrier to stillness, as it is constantly creating thoughts, judgments, and narratives. By practicing presence and becoming more aware of the present moment, we naturally enter into a state of inner stillness. This stillness allows us to connect with the unmanifested, where we experience pure being and consciousness. In this state, we are free from the ego's grip and fully aligned with the flow of life. The unmanifested in relationships. Tolle also discusses how the unmanifested can be experienced in relationships. When we are fully present with others, we are no longer caught up in mental judgments, expectations, or emotional reactions. We see the other person for who they truly are, beyond the labels and identities that the mind creates. In relationships, the ego often creates conflict and separation by projecting its own desires, fears, and judgments onto others. However, when we are present and aligned with the unmanifested, we experience a deeper connection with others. We see them as they truly are, without the filters of the mind or the ego. This leads to more authentic, harmonious relationships. Conclusion: accessing the unmanifested. Tolle concludes the chapter by emphasizing that the unmanifested is always accessible to us, but we must practice presence and surrender to experience it. By becoming more aware of the present moment, observing the mind, and embracing silence and stillness, we open ourselves to the deeper dimensions of consciousness. The unmanifested is not something that can be sought or grasped by the mind. It is a state of pure being that we can experience when we let go of the ego's need for control and identification. The more we align ourselves with the unmanifested, the more we experience inner peace, joy, and spiritual awakening. Chapter 8: Enlightened Relationships. In Chapter 8 of The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle explores the profound shift in relationships that occurs when we practice being present and connect with the unmanifested dimension of life. Tolle reveals how enlightened relationships differ from conventional relationships, which are often driven by the ego, and how presence and awareness are key to transforming the way we connect with others. The ego and relationships. Tolle begins by discussing the impact of the ego on relationships. According to Tolle, the ego is the primary force that governs most relationships. When we are identified with our ego, we enter into relationships primarily to fulfill our own desires, needs, and projections. Our sense of self is often dependent on how others view us or treat us. As a result, most relationships are based on the need for validation and control, rather than genuine connection. The ego thrives on separation, and this creates a false sense of self that is in constant conflict with others. In relationships dominated by the ego, we seek to reinforce our individual identities by comparing, competing, and controlling. We are constantly trying to get something from others, whether it is love, attention, or approval, and we often experience frustration, disappointment, or anger when we don't get what we want. Tolle highlights that attachment, dependency, and the desire to possess others are all driven by the ego. In these relationships, there is no true intimacy or freedom, because the ego is always trying to manipulate the other person to reinforce its own sense of self. True love and the end of dependency. Tolle explains that in enlightened relationships, the need for dependency and control disappears. True love is not about needing the other person to fulfill your emotional void or validate your existence. Instead, it arises from a deep connection to the present moment and the unmanifested dimension of life. In these relationships, we love the other person without trying to possess them or change them. We accept them for who they truly are, without the filters of judgment, expectation, or attachment. True love is free from the ego's need for control or validation. It is an expression of the deeper connection to the essence of both ourselves and others. When we are present and aligned with the unmanifested, we experience a sense of oneness with others, free from the mental projections that often separate us. Tolle emphasizes that true love does not depend on the other person's actions or behaviors. Love arises from being fully present with the other person, and it is based on the recognition that we are all expressions of the same universal consciousness. When we live in the now, we are able to love others without needing anything from them. The role of presence in relationships. One of the central themes of this chapter is the role of presence in creating enlightened relationships. Tolle teaches that when we are fully present with another person, we experience a deeper connection that transcends words, thoughts, and emotions. Presence allows us to see the other person as they truly are, without the mental projections and judgments that the ego often imposes. When we are present, we are able to listen deeply to the other person without distraction. This deep listening is a form of true communication, where we connect on a level that goes beyond mere words. It allows us to experience the other person's essence, which is a part of our own essence, and to see them as they truly are, without the veil of the ego. Tolle explains that when we are present with another person, there is no need to protect ourselves or create defenses. We can simply be with them as they are, and we experience a sense of peace and unity. This kind of connection creates intimacy because it is based on authenticity, rather than the superficial roles or expectations that we usually project onto others. The challenges of ego in relationships. Despite the potential for enlightened relationships, Tolle acknowledges that the ego often creates challenges in relationships. Even when we practice presence, the ego can still interfere, creating patterns of expectation, attachment, and conflict. The key, according to Tolle, is to recognize when the ego is active and to detach from it in order to return to presence. The ego in relationships often shows up as emotional reactivity. When we are triggered by something the other person says or does, the ego can cause us to react with anger, defensiveness, or hurt. These emotional reactions prevent us from being present with the other person and create a cycle of conflict and misunderstanding. Tolle suggests that when we experience emotional reactivity, it is important to pause and become aware of what is happening within us. By observing our emotions and thoughts without identifying with them, we create space for presence and allow the ego to dissolve. This allows us to return to a state of peace and to interact with the other person from a place of non-reactive awareness. Forgiveness and healing in relationships. Tolle also addresses the importance of forgiveness in relationships. Forgiveness is a key aspect of enlightened relationships because it allows us to release the past and let go of emotional baggage. The ego holds on to past grievances and hurts, but forgiveness is a form of freedom that enables us to move beyond the past and into the present moment. Forgiveness is not about excusing the other person's actions but about letting go of the attachment to the hurt and pain that the ego creates. When we forgive, we are no longer bound by the past, and we open ourselves to healing and renewal. Tolle teaches that forgiveness is a gift we give to ourselves, as it frees us from the emotional weight of past conflicts. The role of silence and stillness in relationships. Tolle emphasizes that silence and stillness are essential components of enlightened relationships. Silence is not just the absence of sound but a state of inner stillness that allows us to connect with the present moment and with the essence of the other person. In this space of silence, we experience true communication, which goes beyond words and is felt at a deep, spiritual level. Stillness is the peace that arises when the ego is quieted. In relationships, stillness allows us to experience a deeper sense of connection with others. When we stop trying to manipulate or control, we create space for the natural flow of love and understanding to arise. Conclusion: living in the now in relationships. Tolle concludes by reaffirming that the key to enlightened relationships is presence. When we are present with others, we transcend the ego's need for validation and control, and we experience love, peace, and connection at a deeper level. Enlightened relationships are based on authenticity, acceptance, and deep listening, rather than judgment, attachment, or expectation. Living in the now in relationships allows us to experience a sense of oneness with others, and it opens the door to true intimacy. By practicing presence, observing the mind, and letting go of the ego's grip, we can transform our relationships and experience deeper levels of connection and love. Chapter 9, Beyond Happiness and Unhappiness There is Peace. In Chapter 9 of The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle explores the deeper dimension of peace that exists beyond the transient states of happiness and unhappiness. He explains how our attachment to these fleeting emotional states keeps us locked in cycles of desire, satisfaction, and disappointment. Tolle invites us to move beyond these temporary emotions into a state of inner peace that transcends the duality of pleasure and pain, happiness and unhappiness. Happiness and unhappiness are temporary states. Tolle begins by addressing the common human desire for happiness. We often believe that happiness is the ultimate goal of life, and we strive to attain it by seeking external circumstances that we think will bring us joy. However, Tolle points out that happiness is a temporary state, one that arises from external factors, and as such, it is always subject to change. When we are identified with the mind and the ego, happiness is often dependent on the fulfillment of our desires. But once we achieve what we think we want, the happiness fades, and we find ourselves once again seeking the next source of joy. The pursuit of happiness, Tolle asserts, is a cycle of constant wanting and fleeting satisfaction, leading to frustration and a sense of unfulfillment. On the other hand, unhappiness often arises when we don't get what we want or when we face challenging or painful situations. Like happiness, unhappiness is also a temporary emotional state that comes and goes. When we are trapped in the mind, unhappiness becomes an identity, and we allow negative thoughts and emotions to dominate our experience. Tolle explains that both happiness and unhappiness are bound by time. Happiness arises from past experiences or future projections, while unhappiness stems from resistance to what is happening in the present. Both emotional states are part of the ego's fluctuations, and neither brings lasting peace or fulfillment. The illusion of seeking happiness. Tolle emphasizes that the constant search for happiness outside ourselves is an illusion. We are constantly chasing after something that is external, believing that it will bring us lasting joy. However, as we've seen with the experience of fleeting happiness, it is never a permanent state. Happiness is always tied to circumstances, people, or events, and when those circumstances change, happiness fades. The ego thrives on the chase for happiness and the avoidance of unhappiness because it creates a sense of identity and purpose. The ego is always seeking to maintain its sense of control and superiority, which is why it feeds on emotional highs and lows. The more we identify with the ego's desire for happiness, the more we create suffering when we don't attain it. True peace beyond happiness and unhappiness. Tolle introduces the concept of true peace, which is not dependent on external circumstances. True peace is a state of being that arises when we are fully present in the moment and free from the fluctuations of the mind. When we move beyond the ego's desires for happiness and the avoidance of unhappiness, we enter a space of stillness and calm that is independent of external conditions. True peace is not the absence of negative emotions, but the ability to remain anchored in inner stillness, regardless of what is happening around us. It is a state of consciousness that transcends the emotional highs and lows of the ego and remains steady in the face of both joy and sorrow. Tolle explains that peace is always present, but we often fail to recognize it because we are constantly distracted by our thoughts, desires, and emotional reactions. The practice of being fully present allows us to access this deeper dimension of peace. It is only when we are present that we can experience the stillness beneath the surface of our thoughts and emotions. The role of acceptance. One of the key ways to access true peace is through acceptance of the present moment. Tolle emphasizes that acceptance is the gateway to peace. Acceptance does not mean resignation or passivity, it means fully embracing the present as it is, without resistance or judgment. It is about letting go of the mind's constant desire to control, change, or reject the present moment. When we accept what is, we stop fighting against life and open ourselves to the flow of existence. This acceptance allows us to experience life with a sense of peace and ease, free from the constant fluctuations of the mind. By accepting the present moment, we align ourselves with the flow of life, rather than resisting it. Tolle explains that resistance to the present moment is the root cause of suffering. When we resist what is happening right now, whether it is an unpleasant emotion, a difficult situation, or an external event, we create inner conflict and distress. Acceptance, on the other hand, brings us into harmony with the present moment and allows us to experience peace, even in the midst of challenges. The power of now and inner peace. Tolle reiterates that the key to true peace is the present moment. When we fully embrace the now and stop identifying with the mind's narratives and projections, we experience a deeper connection to our true essence. In this state of presence, we access a timeless peace that transcends the impermanence of happiness and unhappiness. True peace is a state of being that arises when we let go of the ego's need for validation, control, and attachment. It is a peace that is not dependent on external factors but arises from within. Tolle describes this peace as the foundation of our true self, which is beyond the limitations of the mind, the ego, and the fluctuating emotions of the body. Living beyond the ego. To live beyond the ego and experience true peace, we must cultivate awareness and practice presence. By becoming aware of the present moment and disidentifying with the mind, we can step into a state of pure being, a state where peace is not something we seek but something we experience in each moment. This chapter emphasizes that inner peace is not something that comes and goes, as happiness and unhappiness do. True peace is a permanent state of being that we can access at any time, simply by becoming present and letting go of the mind's attachments and desires. Tolle explains that when we are fully present, we are no longer dependent on external conditions to feel at peace. We realize that peace is our natural state, and we begin to live from this deeper dimension of consciousness. Conclusion: peace beyond duality. In conclusion, Tolle reiterates that true peace exists beyond the duality of happiness and unhappiness. Happiness and unhappiness are fleeting emotional states that are tied to the mind's projections of past and future. True peace, on the other hand, is a timeless state of consciousness that arises when we are fully present in the now. It is a peace that transcends the fluctuations of the mind and remains steady, regardless of external circumstances. Tolle encourages us to move beyond the search for happiness and instead cultivate inner peace through acceptance, presence, and surrender to the now. When we do so, we access a deeper dimension of life that is beyond emotional highs and lows, and we experience the peace that is always present within us. Chapter 10, The Meaning of Surrender. In Chapter 10 of The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle explores the concept of surrender, which is a crucial aspect of spiritual awakening and achieving inner peace. Tolle defines surrender not as giving up or resigning to life, but as acceptance of the present moment as it is. He explains how true surrender leads to a deep sense of inner freedom, joy, and alignment with the flow of life. The concept of surrender. Tolle begins by explaining that surrender is not about passively accepting suffering or giving up personal power. Many people misunderstand surrender as a sign of weakness or defeat. However, Tolle clarifies that true surrender is the opposite of this. It is not about yielding to external circumstances or allowing ourselves to be victims. Instead, it is about letting go of the ego's resistance to the present moment and accepting life as it unfolds. Surrender is the release of mental resistance to what is. It is about stopping the struggle with reality and allowing things to unfold without forcing or manipulating them. Tolle describes surrender as an inner state of non-resistance, where we accept life as it is without judgment, expectation, or attachment to how things should be. Surrender and the present moment. Tolle emphasizes that surrender is inherently tied to living in the present moment. When we surrender, we are fully present, accepting what is happening right now without any mental interference. The present moment is always perfect, and when we are truly present, we realize that we do not need to fight against it. Surrender allows us to align with the flow of life, rather than resisting it. We stop trying to control every aspect of our lives, and instead, we trust that life will unfold in its own way. This acceptance frees us from anxiety, fear, and the endless mental chatter that stems from our desire to control or change the present moment. By surrendering to the present moment, we let go of the need to constantly judge and analyze our experiences. Instead, we simply observe and experience life as it is. In doing so, we move beyond the mental and emotional patterns that cause suffering, and we experience a profound sense of inner peace. Surrender to what is. Tolle explains that true surrender involves accepting life exactly as it is, without wishing for it to be different or better. This means accepting the challenges, discomforts, and difficulties that arise, rather than resisting them. It is important to note that surrender does not mean we passively accept abuse, injustice, or suffering in an unhealthy way. Rather, surrender is an internal process of letting go of the mental resistance to what is happening. When we surrender, we accept that life is always in flux and that we cannot control every aspect of our existence. We stop fighting against what we cannot change and instead, we embrace the reality of the moment. This inner acceptance creates space for peace and freedom, even in the face of challenges or hardships. Tolle also stresses that surrendering is not about complacency or giving up on the desire to improve our lives. It is about accepting the present moment as it is, while still taking positive actions toward creating the future we desire. Surrender does not mean that we stop making efforts or setting goals, but it means we release attachment to specific outcomes and trust that life will unfold in its own way. Surrendering the ego. Tolle explains that the ego is the primary force that resists surrender. The ego thrives on control, identification, and separation, and it constantly seeks to create a sense of self by resisting the present moment. The ego wants things to be a certain way and feels threatened by the idea of letting go of this control. Surrendering involves letting go of the ego's need to control, judge, and resist. The more we surrender to the present moment, the more we transcend the ego and experience our true self, which is connected to the unmanifested and pure consciousness. When we surrender, we release our attachment to the mental narratives that define our identity and stop identifying with the mind's judgments and desires. Surrendering to the flow of life. One of the most important aspects of surrender is aligning with the flow of life. Tolle explains that life is constantly moving, evolving, and changing. When we resist this natural flow, we create inner conflict and suffering. However, when we surrender to life as it is, we can move with the flow rather than against it. Surrendering to the flow of life involves trusting that things are unfolding exactly as they should. It means accepting that we cannot control everything, but we can choose to be present and open to what life brings. When we are aligned with the flow of life, we feel a deep sense of ease and harmony. Tolle also emphasizes that surrender does not mean inaction. It does not mean we stop making choices or taking responsibility for our lives. Rather, it means letting go of attachment to outcomes and allowing life to unfold naturally. By surrendering to the flow of life, we find that we are more capable of making conscious choices that align with our true nature and purpose. The role of pain and suffering in surrender. Tolle explains that pain and suffering are often the result of resisting the present moment. When we are unable to accept what is happening, we create internal conflict, which leads to emotional and physical pain. Surrendering to the present moment can help us release the suffering caused by resistance, as it allows us to let go of attachment to pain and discomfort. Tolle also clarifies that surrender does not mean suppressing or avoiding pain. Instead, it means feeling the pain without attaching to it or identifying with it. By accepting pain as part of the present moment, we can experience it without becoming overwhelmed by it. This acceptance allows us to transcend the pain body and experience greater peace. Surrender and the end of the mind. The final aspect of surrender that Tolle addresses is the end of the mind's domination. The mind is constantly active, analyzing, judging, and labeling everything we experience. This constant mental activity prevents us from being present and experiencing life as it truly is. Surrendering to the now means ceasing the constant mental chatter and moving into a state of pure awareness. When we let go of the need to control our thoughts and emotions, we experience a deeper level of consciousness. This state of presence is free from the mind's fluctuations and connected to the unmanifested. Tolle emphasizes that the state of surrender is not passive, it is a state of active presence and awareness. Surrendering to the now is an ongoing practice of accepting life as it is, moment by moment, without resistance or judgment. As we surrender, we access a deeper dimension of consciousness that brings peace, clarity, and a sense of unity with life. Conclusion: the power of surrender. Tolle concludes the chapter by reiterating that surrender is the key to inner peace and spiritual awakening. When we stop resisting the present moment and fully accept it as it is, we enter a state of presence that transcends the ego and the mind. Surrendering to the now allows us to experience life from a place of stillness and peace, free from the mental patterns of judgment, fear, and attachment. Conclusion: embracing the present moment. As we reach the end of The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle has guided us on a profound journey into the heart of presence, a state of being fully awake and conscious in the moment. Through his teachings, we've come to understand that true peace, happiness, and fulfillment are not found in the past or future, but in the now, the only time that truly exists. Tolle has shown us that the mind, with its endless thoughts, worries, and desires, is a barrier to our experience of life as it truly is. By disidentifying with the mind and observing our thoughts without attachment, we can free ourselves from the ego's grip and access a deeper dimension of consciousness. This practice of living in the present moment is not just a temporary escape from mental chatter, it is a transformative shift that allows us to reconnect with our true essence, which is pure consciousness and stillness. We have learned that surrendering to the now is not about resignation or giving up, it is the act of acceptance, of embracing life as it unfolds and releasing resistance to what is. By practicing presence, we stop struggling with life's challenges and start experiencing them with a sense of peace and ease. True peace does not come from external circumstances but from within, from our ability to be fully present and aware. As we integrate the teachings from this book into our lives, we realize that the present moment is not something to be grasped or controlled. It is an invitation to experience life as it is, beyond judgment, beyond thought, beyond the ego. In the now, we find an ever-present source of inner peace, joy, and freedom, no matter the circumstances. The Power of Now is not just a book to read and understand intellectually, it is a call to live fully in the moment. By practicing the teachings Tolle shares with us, we can transcend the limitations of the mind and begin to experience life from a place of deep presence, connection, and spiritual awakening. May we all continue to return to the now, where life unfolds in its fullest expression, and may we carry the peace, joy, and wisdom we find there with us in every moment.